pretty fun one because we get to answer questions that we have gotten from our community, from children, from parents who children have asked them these questions. And we want to have people who can speak to it, who have lived it, be the ones to respond. So today I have Sarah, Victoria, and Lauren hanging out with me, and we're going to hop in. So we got quite a few questions that came in, and we're going to address them. And we do hope it will be useful for all of you who are tuning in. Okay, so the first one is, let's start off on a fun note. So anyone who's willing to share in the group, okay, what is a funny or memorable moment you had while learning French?
I can go first. So for me, when I traveled to France this past summer, I kept saying bonjour, even if it was late at night. And I didn't realize that it doesn't translate. You should be saying bonsoir or bonne soirée. And so they would always correct me, and it took me about 2 weeks to adapt to that and realize that we don't say that there, we say bonsoir. So I kept just saying bonjour and got corrected every single time.
I love that. And sometimes, yeah, that's kind of a French lesson in itself, right? So people think, yeah, bonjour, yeah, you're saying hello, but there's almost another level of respect and honoring the time of the day. That
Exactly.
may not exactly be a rule or thing that you learn, but that is a fun one. Yeah, anyone else?
Yeah, I can go ahead. I remember in high school when I had first started taking a pretty big interest in French as a subject. One of my grade 12 French classes, we had a final oral test for our, um, in place of a final exam. And at that time, because it was our last year, someone had just freshly moved to our school. And so we didn't know him. He was really quiet. And I was placed in a group with him to do this interview. I remember we sat down and we started talking in French to, be assessed. And all of a sudden, he came in with this beautiful, fluent, like perfect French. And I had never heard him talk before, so I didn't know. As it turned out, he came from, it wasn't France, but it was some francophone country. So he had grown up speaking French, in his home with his parents and all that. So I remember just the face on my teacher's face and my face, and we all just jumped for a second. And I remember even the teacher was sort of struggling to keep up conversation with him, and he was so casual about it. So I don't know. I always love that story because I think it kind of goes to show that, we all have more to learn. No one is, you can be teaching a language and you're still, if it's not your mother tongue, then you still have a lot to learn.
Right on. Yeah, that's a good one. He shocked you guys. That's good. Anyone else?
Yeah, I actually don't have like a vivid memory like Victoria and Sarah did, but I do remember like when I was in elementary school, because I did go to a French immersion that like my friends and I, we would watch like French movies in class or like shows, and then we would try to like imitate like the French accent sometimes in English, or like try to speak like a fluent French native in French. I just remember those memories were like very fun when we were younger.
That is fun. That's like an insider, like Frenchy joke. I remember one of our students, either this year or last year, and this is like it's so interesting because they're young, but I'm sure it's a habit. And they weren't even doing it to be funny. But one of my students, we do our mantras to begin class. So the mantra was "Je suis capable," I am capable, right? And she's reading, and she's a pretty decent reader, but capabler was probably a new word for her, so it was just very fun. It was like my own inside joke when she was reading her mantra and she's like, "Je suis capable," and I was like, "OMG, that is like so funny!" But it's just because she's associating, okay, and we do it too sometimes. People will do it. You add a French accent to the English word, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm doing it." But yeah, no, that's really fun, guys. Okay, so let's dive in a little deeper. Here's a good one that came in, and that is, why would you guys say learning French is important? Like, why?
I can go ahead. I think it just opens up so many more career paths. I definitely have through like the application process in fourth year and the work scaries, thinking about what I'm going to do in the future. I've been able to apply through Francophone streams, which gives me more of a chance to get accepted to medical programs, which is incredible. So just that in itself, having more career options.
That's great. Yeah, right on. Sarah?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before, but for me, the main sort of motivation for learning French, especially in an academic context, is just the amount of openness, like cultural openness that brings into your life. As I mentioned before, when you think of learning French, I feel like people generally associate that with France itself and, the harsh grammar rules and, spelling and all of that and the accents, the phonology, all of these things. But there's so much diversity within like Francophone culture, for example. And by learning French as a language, you learn so much about different countries and their histories and, their traditions. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing that you can carry throughout your life, just as an individual, but also like Victoria mentioned, academically, it's also very nice because then in any work environment, I think it's always nice to be aware of those, different cultures and backgrounds that people come from. So for me, especially, like I want to teach. So working with obviously a wide range of children, from a wide range of backgrounds, that's something that I will likely encounter. So it's always nice to have this sort of in the back of your mind that cultural awareness and knowledge.
Yeah, for sure.
I also think French is important to learn, especially here in Canada, because it's one of our two languages, official languages, which obviously, like Sarah and Victoria said, opens up doors for more job opportunities. And also, there's other like international organizations like the UN. If you're interested, knowing that can enhance your opportunity to work there. And
Yes,
also, I heard like from a young age, because my mom would always tell me like learning a new language, is better for your brain. It makes your brain stronger.
facts.
So
That's
yeah,
facts. Yeah.
it's good to
And
learn a new language.
even if that's the bare minimum, guys, sometimes people, 'cause I always say I'm a little bit of a rebel in this regard. So I don't I don't normally promote, oh, it's gonna get you a good job because I actually don't really like what's a job? Like I know it's gonna get a lot of flack maybe, but like what's a job? Jobs can change and careers can change and what you want to do can change. So I always speak about French being this vehicle to gain more access, to get into a room, to get into a conversation, to get into a network, to get into an introduction, because language is that. French is our vehicle and you guys' vehicle and our students that are working and doing their best in our programs to get there, but it's not meant like your goal and let's say, your utopia should not be to get a job in French, right? And I'll just say the access and even how it develops your brain and how it makes you recognize different things culturally and how it opens up your mind to even connections that exist within other languages and other cultures. It's beautiful. So it's an access point, it's a connection point, it's a unifier ultimately. And yeah, when parents ask me why French, I say, well, why not? Okay, well done. So let's hop in. We had tons of other questions come in. We can't get to all today, but we'll do our best to do as many as possible. And I'm just going through a few of them. So, what would you guys say? A lot of families sometimes struggle because they don't speak French at home, but the children are encouraged. They say, "Oh, well, you need to speak French. Practice, practice, practice." So, our students want to know, what is the best way to practice French outside of school?
For me, it probably seems funny, but just talking to myself, I know that might not be the case for everyone, but I know when I was really struggling in elementary school, I would just like talk to myself or also find a friend that speaks French and then just I do this thing when I went abroad. I keep bringing it up because I had so many cool experiences there, but
Yeah.
my friend and I, it's easy to fall into the habit of just speaking English again. So we told ourselves that every Friday we would stick to it. So we called it French Fridays and we would just only speak French to each other. And so it really, even if we weren't doing it throughout the rest of the week, which we were in in the most cases, but it definitely helped me develop skills. So just speaking with a friend or with yourself.
Right on. Yeah. That's pretty cool because sometimes it's like yeah, for us, if your children are in French immersion, there are going to be classmates, depending what age or grade they are, they can either meet up or virtually connect and have, yeah, like French Fridays, right? Just nothing crazy, 15 minutes, half an hour, and just practice. Yeah, I love that. Anyone else want to add to that one?
Yeah, I think I actually had a pretty similar experience to Victoria, just through the set times where you're practicing the language itself. I remember again in high school, one of my friends and I, because we didn't go to a French immersion school, so we were kind of relying on our own interests to sort of motivate our learning.
Yeah.
And we both wanted to pursue careers relating to French. And she had the idea to start a kind of like a text I don't know how to describe it, but just we had a set time every Wednesday for an hour. We would either text or call completely in French. And that way we made sure that outside of school, we still had a designated time to practice French. And even if we weren't, like Victoria said, even if it wasn't perfect, even if we were making mistakes, with just the idea of being able to practice, your pronunciation, practice, vocabulary and like flow of sentences, it was really helpful. And also, just generally, I think exposure to the language outside of school is a lot simpler than I think people think. Like, you don't have to be, reading a big scary novel in French. It can be like, I remember one of the first things that really helped my reading comprehension in French was reading Le Petit Prince, which is, I mean, it's literally a children's book, but it was so nice because I was new to the language. So for me, it felt really complex, but it was still easy to absorb because they were all like, these pictures and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing, a common theme, sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
No, no, I was just gonna say I wanted to add on like maybe watching films, shows, or cartoons.
Yes.
That will help a lot too.
And our kids, they're not going to probably deny an opportunity to watch some more or get some more screen time or watch something animated or children related in another language. That's fun. Okay, yeah. No, I was sharing that. What I'm hearing as a common theme is intentionality. So there are quite a few assumptions that being in school and in the classroom will be enough for the immersion to come through. And I always give a real perspective that in school is not enough. So I love from what I heard from all of you, really just making the time. And obviously, in our case, it would be the parents who have to maybe brainstorm or keep in touch and they say, hey, let's just put our kids online. Who knows? Or they stay after school and we just try to go to the library, something that intentionally or enroll them in French classes with us. And intentional time dedicated to learning French is where I believe the fluency and the next level of mastery in the language unlocks. So, really relatable, everything that you guys are sharing. So, I'll probably share two or three more questions that came in. And a good one. Oh, so this is great. So this is for maybe our timid students, our shy ones, even those who maybe are struggling with the confidence a little bit. What should our students do when they don't understand something in French? What are some best practices, some tips if they just don't get something or everything?
Yeah, I was that shy kid in elementary school. I think over the years I've built confidence, but I definitely was that person that didn't want to make a mistake in front of my class of 20 people.
Yeah,
So I think just going to your teacher after class, I think they'll view that as very admirable and see that you're taking initiative. So they would definitely put in extra work or even one-on-one sessions with a tutor can always help where it's more of a comfortable space and you feel like you can make mistakes so that when that comes up in a more intimidating environment that you feel like you have the knowledge to, make mistakes but learn from them.
right on. Yeah.
I think I have something very similar in terms of just asking questions. Like ask as many questions as possible, even though there is that fear and anxiety of making mistakes around people and not wanting to seem as though you don't know what you're talking about. But I think that kind of like what I mentioned with the first story, that I think language learning is one of those areas where you always have more to learn. There are people who, French is
Hmm.
their mother tongue and they still feel like they have so much to learn. Even in English, when you think about it, you might hear someone talk and they're speaking in English too, even though it's your first language. You might think, oh, the way they said that was so eloquent, like that was so beautifully spoken. And that just goes to show, you still have more to learn. There's still always ways you can improve. So as much as I understand the anxiety of, oh, I don't want to ask, that sounds scary. I think that there's a lot of benefit that comes from asking questions, because even the people who you're asking questions to, they also understand that, you're gonna make mistakes and that's okay. And like Victoria said, if it is something where you're really scared of asking questions in front of a class, for example, going after class to a teacher specifically and asking them one-on-one, or even looking for online resources. And there's lots of language learning apps too now that can be helpful if you have questions that they can, help you with.
Hmm. Thank you for that. Lauren, anything on that one?
Yeah, I also agree with what they said. Ask a teacher or a friend if you have anyone that can help you. Also, just to like review it at home, write it down, make sure that you don't forget so you can always have that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're gonna probably just have time for one more question right now, guys. And this is, it's nice when we saw this question because it is an area of sensitivity for a lot of our students when maybe they are moving up in grade. And of course, moving up in grade does increase complexity in the language, does increase what the requirements and what they're being evaluated on. So a question came through was, how do I stay confident when I make mistakes in French? I would love to get your feedback on that, guys, as we wind down.
Well, I'm gonna touch on the aspect of like the new year and being evaluated on new stuff. So I feel like that was an issue that I had too, that I was like intimidated for the year to come. And I think the reason I was so nervous was because in the summer I just wasn't practicing. And so I would lose all of those foundational skills and then I'd have to like quickly relearn them plus more stuff because of the new year.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was just really practicing in the summer and making sure I stayed on top of what I learned and reviewing my notes, which I know sounds like, "Oh, I just want to enjoy the summer," but trust me, in the long run, it helps a lot. And kind of just taking every experience with a grain of salt too. Like I know when I was away, I was making a lot of mistakes, right? Like I've only been learning French in Canada. I've never gone to France before, so this it was my first time. And even something as simple as saying bonjour instead of bonsoir, like at first it really, like I was really embarrassed because I would get corrected, but then you kind of laugh about it and you learn and then you turn it into a joke, or even the fact that it's a learning lesson, no one there was trying to judge me. They were just trying to help me learn. So just, yeah, taking everything with a grain of salt.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Sarah?
think for me as well, kind of similarly, treating every mistake as a good thing in the sense that, it's a learning opportunity is very important. Um, Not to be cliche, but it is true, like Victoria says, practice makes perfect. So making sure that even if you're not in a peak academic period, like you're in school and you're doing all your tests in French, making sure that even during the summer, for example, or during the breaks, that you're still making time. It doesn't have to be all day, but like I said, with my one friend, we had an hour that we would just designate once a week to speaking to each other in French. Even little things like that can go a long way in terms of, um, you know, building up your confidence in terms of in the sense that the more you speak, the more confident you'll be. Even if you're making mistakes, at least okay, I've done this before. You know what I mean? And I think that that can be really helpful. So yeah, again, just practice and keep in mind that when you do make mistakes, it's okay. It's a way for you to learn, and you're going to be better because of it.
For sure. Lauren, any final words?
I also like what Victoria and Sarah said, like view mistakes as growth, because mistakes show that you're learning. And just always remember that fluency and just learning a language is always going to take time. So just be patient with yourself.
Well said, well spoken to all of you. So thank you for having this conversation with me. And thank you to our parents and our families who submitted these questions on behalf of them or on behalf of their children. And it's always important to keep the conversation open, okay? So just know that as you're walking through this French journey, whether you are just getting started or you have interest or you're on the journey, like you're probably for a couple years in and learning, just so that everyone or someone has been in the position that you or your child has been in before. So always seek out an opportunity to connect with community that has these type of discussions where you can ask these questions and where you can really get a word of encouragement that, hey, one step at a time, one vocabulary word at a time, one syllable at a time, and you're going to get there with the right amount of consistency and the dedicated support for your child's French learning journey. So we're going to wrap there. Thank you guys for hopping on today. Like I said, to any parents who want to get more information about our French language programs, you are welcome to click on the link below this video. You're going to see a link to book a call with me. Let's have a conversation. Let's get an understanding about what you're looking for, and let's get your child the right support. So thank you once again. Have yourselves a great day.